If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and make sure you hit the subscribe button now. And if you are subscribed, check and make sure YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like, as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. In 2014, an African immigrant from Cameroon named Terrence Tico was working at a Los Angeles hospital when he was accused of sexual assault by a patient. A white Latino sheriff's deputy, Carlos Vega, came to the hospital and interrogated Tico. Vega put Tico in a windowless room and began interrogating him relentlessly. Tico repeatedly denied the accusation of sexual assault, but Vega wouldn't let him leave. Detainment is a form of arrest, by the way. Sheriff's Deputy Vega then put his hand on his gun and called Tico a racial slur. Tico asked for a lawyer. Vega refused. This man demanded a lawyer, and this sheriff's deputy denied him one. And then Vega told Tico that he would have Tico and his family deported back to Cameroon. This is your Black Latino Alliance, by the way, in California, which is supposed to be so liberal. Now, keep in mind, Deputy Vega never gave Tico his Miranda rights before beginning this interrogation. He's questioning a man who's been accused of a crime, but never tells the man his rights. An immigrant, no less. This was not a case of someone who was allegedly behaving suspiciously and Vega just happened to be there. This is a case of the police being called on Tico specifically. Deputy Vega was there to investigate Tico and interrogate him because he had been accused of a specific crime. So there was no point at which Vega wasn't collecting information to be used against Tico specifically for the sake of prosecuting him. Vega knew this. So everything Tico said could and would be used against him in a court of law, but Tico was never told this. After all these threats and being refused the right to leave and being refused a lawyer, Vega dictated an alleged confession that Tico allegedly signed. Now, Tico didn't give this confession, Vega dictated it to him. And this confession was used against Tico at trial, even after it was pointed out that Tico was never given his Miranda rights. He was never told them at any point, which didn't matter anyway because once Tico asked for a lawyer and was denied one, Vega had violated the law multiple times. But the important thing here is that this illegal confession was used as evidence at trial against Tico. Now, Terrence Tico was ultimately acquitted, and he exercised his right under law to sue Vega for violating his constitutional rights. And this is where white supremacists in the courtroom got on code. Vega's lawyers said that the confession was voluntary and uncoerced. Naturally, they would tell that lie, but they knew that this lie would be easy enough to disprove, so instead they reached for a technicality that would be independent of Vega's illegal questioning. They said that since Tico had not been put in handcuffs, he had not been arrested, and that Miranda only applies after someone is put in handcuffs, i.e. taken into custody. So anything before that point is fair game. Again, this is playing weasel words. This was not a case where this Vega creep just happened to see Tico and saying the guy was behaving suspiciously. I didn't know if anything was wrong or not. He was just behaving suspiciously. The sheriff's deputy was called to that location specifically in relation to Tico personally. And he was interrogating Tico about something with the intention of using anything that was said against him. It couldn't have been more blatant. You put someone in a room, deny them a lawyer when they demand one, threaten them, and dictate a phony confession to them. It's a classic case of I'm white and I say so. And morons like Tiffany Cross-Eyes are saying how bad this is for black and brown people.
All right, you have the right to remain silent, but don't count on the police to tell you that. The right-wing Supreme Court gutted Miranda rights this week by ruling that officers cannot be sued for failing to provide the Miranda warning before questioning someone in their custody. The decision will cut off a critical avenue for justice and will, of course, disproportionately impact black folks and also many brown folks as well.
But earlier this month, the court, in a decision that wasn't as sort of lifted up as this one, in Egbert versus Boulay, they did the same thing for federal law enforcement. So because federal law enforcement, in this case it was Customs and Border Patrol, they have a national security interest. Now there's no one under cover of law that you can sue when they violate your civil rights.
Notice how she does not say that it was a white Hispanic who did this. Notice how she leaves that out. And that's just the beginning of things that she left out of her little mindless commentary. She's just parroting that cross-racial alliance stuff like a mindless zombie. Now, remember when I said earlier that the illegal confession was admitted at trial? Well, Vega's own lawyers admitted that the failure to give Tico his Miranda warning means that any statements couldn't be used in court. So that's why they were saying, well, there's no need for him to have the ability to sue the guy. After all, the confession couldn't be used. But as I've already hammered home, the phony confession was admitted as evidence in Tico's trial and was used against him in court. Vega's lawyers said that having to give Miranda warnings would, quote-unquote, saddle police departments nationwide with extraordinary burdens in connection with lawful and appropriate investigative work. Now, this is a contradiction in terms. You got somebody who is blatantly collecting information to use against somebody without making sure that that person understands this is what's happening. You are basically being interrogated for the sake of prosecution right now, and then turns around and says this is lawful and appropriate when it's the very antithesis of it. The Miranda warning is an undue burden, is what was being said here. And given the stellar police work that this Vega creep did, you can understand why Los Angeles is overrun with crime. Now, Tico has had to fight his way through the American injustice system for the sake of making sure that a thug with a badge is held accountable. In this case, made it all the way to the Supreme Court. And they ruled in favor of the police, naturally, saying that the Miranda warning only applies after someone's been told they're under arrest. So the police can involuntarily detain you, which is a form of arrest, and then interrogate you for as long as they want. And as long as they haven't put you in handcuffs yet, they can then claim everything you said up until that point can be used in court, whether it was a real statement or a phony one like they made up in this case. But it can be used against you. Now, the Supreme Court tried to give themselves a phony veneer of respectability to what is clearly just outlawing part of the Constitution by saying, well, people don't need to be able to sue under these circumstances. Why, there's already a remedy in place, and the remedy is, these un-Mirandized statements, they can be thrown out in court. So it's not a problem. You don't need to be able to sue. An un-Mirandized statement can be thrown out in court. So there's your remedy. But as I've been telling you all along, that flies in the face of what happened here because the phony confession that was elicited from Tico was admitted as evidence in his trial, and it was used against him, even though the trial court judge knew that it wasn't covered by Miranda. And the Supreme Court knew this as well. Now, you can wind up being sent to prison over a blatant violation of your rights, and the Supreme Court says you can't sue the crooked cops who did it to you. This is the striking down of Miranda in all but name. The right-wing lunatics on the court say that their ruling doesn't mean that the police no longer have to give a Miranda warning, but that's a distinction without a difference, because their ruling means that there's no punishment when they don't. Miranda warnings are optional now. That's what this ruling means, and that's how it's going to be used. Now, before you say, oh, Professor Truth, that's just them right-wing extremists on the Supreme Court. See, the Democrats and them folks on CNN and MSNBC, they was right. We got to vote for the Democrats, and especially Biden. We gotta make sure Biden gets our vote, because this Supreme Court is out of control, and if Biden was in charge, this never would have happened. Well, I got news for you, stupid. The Biden administration was neck deep in this ruling. In fact, Biden's White House sent an amicus brief to the Supreme Court supporting the crooked cop and demanding that the police not be sued for violating Miranda. Biden sent his own Solicitor General to petition the Supreme Court to get rid of Miranda rights and to make sure that citizens can't sue the police. Now, for those of you who don't know, in law, mostly when it comes to Supreme Court cases, third parties who are not directly involved in the lawsuit can offer what are called amicus briefs to the Supreme Court, amicus meaning friend of the court. It's a way for an uninvolved third party to elbow their way into pending litigation and to try to influence the outcome of the case. Now, the people who send amicus briefs are interested parties who think that they have something to gain by the court ruling a particular way. Biden didn't just have his Solicitor General send that brief to the Supreme Court. He wanted her to send it because Biden wanted Miranda struck down, and he wanted to make sure that citizens cannot take the police to court. He's telegraphing exactly what his future intentions are. Biden, no matter what he was saying to some of the soft-headed, weak-willed idiots who went along with it, this is the kind of police reform that Biden wants. Immunity from law no matter what the police do. The U.S. government was not a party to this lawsuit. They were not the defendant nor the plaintiff. The defendant was a crooked, racist LA sheriff's deputy who was most likely one of those gang members who the LAPD and the LASD are infested with. Biden didn't have to get involved. When it comes to the January 6 hearings, the white media says nonstop that Biden's not getting involved. He's not even saying anything because he doesn't want anyone to be able to say that he was trying to influence the committee. But in this case, Biden just couldn't help himself. He had to get involved. His White House sent an amicus brief to the Supreme Court saying the crooked cops shouldn't be touched and that citizens shouldn't be able to do anything about it. Now, to all of you Biden butt kissers out there who kept saying, Biden gonna be better than Trump, tell me, how is this different than Trump? You have a situation here where Joe Biden is taking sides against the so-called liberal minority on the court, and Biden is siding with the likes of Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito. How is this different than Trump? I want you Biden butt kissers to think about all the cheerleading you did for him. Think about when, after he got elected, he began running around, standing with police nonstop, palling around with the thugs in blue. Keep in mind, just last month, Biden and Kamala made a huge deal out of him signing an executive order on policing, and then the white media tried to use the phrase police reform to describe it when it was anything but police reform. Some of you Biden sexuals tried to use the old, well, he doing a chess move line. Well, he gots to take baby steps now. He can't do everything. I mean, he ain't got control of the Congress, you knows. You're right, he doesn't have control of the Congress. And yet Biden's not letting that stop him from appealing to the third branch of government to legislate from the bench. And you see what kind of legislation that he's advocating for. Isn't it interesting how we got Biden and Obama and others telling black folks what they can't do for us? Oh, we can't do anything. Well, we don't have the power to. But they don't tell the police that. They don't tell the police, well, we don't have the power to do anything for you. Well, there's nothing we can do. Why? All we have is just a executive branch. We have a split legislative branch. And, well, the judiciary is a completely independent branch. That's not what they told the cops. They said, we're going to the mat for these guys. Yeah, they give black people all of this. We can't do nothing, but everybody else, they show what they can do. So last month, while Biden was putting on a meaningless show, signing an empty executive order that wasn't worth the paper it was written on, at that same time, he knew that this lawsuit was being heard before the Supreme Court, and Biden was telling his Solicitor General to petition the Supreme Court to eliminate Miranda and take away your right to sue the police. See, Negroes like the Congressional Black Talkers, they want black people to fall for empty gestures. But they're not talking about how Biden personally helped to gut Miranda. Biden was leading the charge to get the court to make police immune from prosecution. But you're not going to be hearing any of the national networks and the Al Sharptons and the rest of these do-nothing frauds say anything about it. And of course, that goes triple for your so-called left-leaning white media. They're not mentioning this little detail. Tiffany Cross-Eyes sure as hell didn't. In fact, they're all trying to act like they don't know Biden had anything to do with this ruling at all. They're talking about it, not mentioning the fact that Biden was the one who pushed for this Supreme Court ruling. And they're not mentioning that it was one of these white Latinos responsible for doing this to an African. They're just completely and thoroughly overlooking the blatantly racial aspect of this and Biden's involvement. See, when the white leftist media and the Democrats are going into hysterics saying that the striking down of Roe V Wade will endanger other rights, this isn't one of the rights they're talking about. And they don't point out, hey, yeah, other rights are getting struck down by the Supreme Court and Biden is helping them to do it. The Democrats are helping to usher in a police state. This is the purest evidence that the Democrats are controlled opposition. Both parties serve the same master and for the same purpose. Tiffany Cross-Eyes, Joke Reed, Don Lemonade, Roly Poly, Jason Johnson, and all the other bootlicks, they aren't talking about that. And they're not going to be saying, you know what, the black vote needs to be linked to whether or not they're operating on our interests. They're not going to be bringing that up to black folks and saying, you know what, it looks like there's no difference between Biden and the Republicans. Oh, but they will be mentioning, well, Biden did sign a police executive order, you know. Yeah, just like Barack Obama did. Yeah, notice how the blue alert executive order that Obama signed and what Biden's done to the Supreme Court, how it complements each other. That lets you know what the real policy is. Biden looked black people in the eye and he said that he stood for police accountability. He sent out Twitter tweets saying he's got black folks' backs. But he knew that he was about to make it where citizens would have no means to hold police accountable on their own. You just have to hope that maybe a DA or maybe a U.S. attorney does something about it, which of course they won't. And what they'll be saying is, well, we don't really have standing in the court because they didn't do anything against the state. They just did it against you. See, the difference between Trump and Biden is that Trump was honest about his mendacity. Trump was honest about his bigotry and all the dirt that he planned to do. He was upfront about it. Biden, on the other hand, he does his dirt behind closed doors. Or he has a few bootlicking Negroes stand in front of him and tell you that up isn't up and down isn't down. He secretly sends out legal briefs to the Supreme Court telling them to cut you off at the knees. And then he smiles in your face and tells you, black people have always had my back and I'll have yours. Oh yeah, he's got your back all right. Makes it a lot easier for him to plunge the knife. You better remember this. Because your bootlick media won't talk about it. Your white liberals will maybe mention it once, but this isn't something that they want you to remember. And why is that? They don't think that Biden taking sides with Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, and Brett Kavanaugh is important. The same Supreme Court justices who just struck down Roe V Wade a couple of days ago, they've now struck down a legal right far more important than abortion. The ability of citizens to hold the police accountable for violating your rights. And now you can't do anything about it. They can violate your rights with impunity. Because in part of Joe Biden. Yeah, this is your police reform that Biden was talking about. But only the black media will tell you this. All these other fakers, frauds, phonies, and fools, they're trying to bury it. They're going to try to pretend like it didn't happen. Or as if it's not as bad as all that. Same way that when it came to the 94 crime bill, the white media only asked a couple of questions of Simone Mamie Sanders once and then never brought it up again. Now, they might mention it one time and they'll move on. That way they can claim, well, we mentioned it, we discussed this, so you can't say we never brought it up. And when you point out that they only mentioned it one time, they'll say, well, there were a lot of stories going on at the time. And meanwhile, they always seem to find a way to mention Bill Cosby, at least a few times. There could be an invasion from Mars, a zombie plague, and the rapture happening all at the same time, and the white media would still make time and space to demonize a black man. They're never too busy to do that. I want you guys to remember this. Tiffany Cross-Eyes mentioning the ruling of the Supreme Court on her little sideshow, but neither she nor her guest mentioned the small detail that the Biden administration was pushing for this ruling. They wanted this ruling. And they told the court that they should ignore the citizens' right to seek redress when their most basic of constitutional rights is being trampled on. And don't expect them to make an issue out of this. They'll do interviews with Biden, and they won't bring this up. There's going to be interviews on MSNBC with Biden, but they're not going to say, hey, that whole ruling with Tico versus Vega, what about you guys telling the Supreme Court to get rid of Miranda? They'll do interviews with Biden, but that's not going to be something that they press him on. Just for the sake of argument, if public pressure does force the white media to have to mention it to Biden, then they'll let Biden spout whatever lying talking point he wants to, and they'll accept that. They won't even question it. Just like the lies that Kamala told about her record as DA and California Attorney General. Just like the lies she told about where she stands on reparations. Big Bird, when he did his so-called interview with her, which was nothing more than an in-studio press conference, he just let her tell whatever lies she wanted about reparations. She could say whatever she wanted to say about it, and he only asked one question and then moved right on. See, that's not media coverage, that's a media cover-up. If the white media truly believes that the U.S. is hurtling towards fascism, then Biden just helped take a major step towards an all-out police state by making it where citizens have no means to hold police accountable. This event makes it indisputably clear to even the most hard-headed Biden sexual that it made no sense to vote for this man. The lesser of two evils crap sounds pretty hollow right about now, don't it? It's like we've always told you, the lesser of two evils is still evil. But Biden is not less evil than Trump. He's simply the same evil face, just with a grin instead of a scowl. Well, that's a distinction without a difference. Both the Democrats and the Republicans are on the same side when it comes to the enforcement arm of white supremacy. You have no friends. That's the point. See, Biden isn't giving speeches saying what a sad day it is that Miranda has been gutted. He didn't say a peep about it because he doesn't want anyone to know the part that he played in all this. And yet we'll still have the same bought and paid for bootlicking Negroes telling us we have to vote for Biden or the Republicans are going to take our rights away. And we need to support Biden because he'll be able to choose better Supreme Court justices and there'll be better outcomes in these judicial rulings. Biden fought against the liberal minority on the court. And he sided with Trump's Supreme Court justices. The same white media who was talking about qualified immunity and other things. Oh, there's just all these protections in place for the police can't be touched. Yeah, this happened and they're being all hush-hush about it. Because the uprisings of 2020 showed the lie about how the police just can't be indicted. No, the prosecutors didn't want to do it. And now what's happening is more and more pressure is being put on prosecutors. They're actually having to charge some of the bastards and having to prosecute some of them. But you got judges who haven't gotten the memo. And what's happening is people are putting pressure on the judges. So this is supposed to be part of a backstop to make it where, okay, instead of having it where prosecutors are being pressured, we're going to start rolling back the ability to even charge police at all. Since the qualified immunity lie has fallen, now they're just deciding, okay, well, maybe we can't do much about prosecutors in criminal trials, but we'll make it where citizens can't do anything in civil court. This is supposed to be the beginning of what they hope is going to be a counteroffensive to holding police accountable. Yeah, Biden told you one thing, and he's doing exactly the opposite. As I and so many others have been asking you for several years now, what is it that Trump or any other Republican is going to do to black people that the Democrats aren't already doing now? It makes no sense to vote for either party because neither party at the national level certainly is doing a dang thing for black people. They're both trying to harm black people. Only one of them's trying to skin us from the neck down and the other one from the ankles up. Trump was encouraging the police to rough up suspects during an arrest. Remember that one? And now Biden has helped to make sure you can't sue the police when they violate your rights. So where's this big difference between the two that I keep hearing about? See, this is why it matters who you choose to listen to. Some of the lurkers and losers who keep making excuses for and carrying water for the Democrats, you've been arguing for the longest time that we should support Biden. Well, you supported him, remember? A lot of you have been laying real low. It's been hard to find all of them Biden supporters for the last year and a half. They've been laying real low. You told every black person you could to put their faith in Biden. You put your own credibility on the line to get black people to support him. You Biden butt kissers, you were doing the most to tell black people that he's on black folks' side and he's going to be different than Trump and just you wait, just you see, he's going to be different than Trump. You were the ones who told black people that. And this is how Biden repays you, by showing that everything the black media ever said about him was true. And everything he ever said was a lie. Again, Biden's White House told the Supreme Court that this was the ruling they wanted. They said that. But now Biden's not taking any credit for this. He's hoping that this falls down the memory hole, and there'll be a whole lot of black bootlicks trying to help him pull that con game. He's betting that the same simple-minded saps who bought his line of bull will talk themselves into doing it again. So when you saw Biden hanging out with those police functions, palling around with the thugs in blue, giving some speech to them, now you know why. He had assured the police unions not to worry. He didn't have black people's backs. He had the police's, and he would have the police's backs against black people. So all you Biden butt kissers, you need to take a bow. This is your boy here. Oh yeah, y'all been real quiet, but go ahead. You can go ahead and peep up and tell us how much better he is now. This is certainly the time to do it. You've been in hiding since the election, and we all know the reason why. Because the black media is not letting anyone forget Biden's lies, the anti-black laws that he wrote, his phony promises that he broke, and how he says one thing to us and then turns around and does exactly the opposite. We're keeping score, and that's something that you never counted on. So come on, people, we got to go to the polls and back Biden in 2024 because he's going to protect black people's rights. Right? Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Morris Bodden, Brian Ellis, Tyrone Leak, Kimberly Dooley, and Aaron Kennedy. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.